Here we are at patch 13.20. My name is Chris, and I am joined by my longtime patch review duo partner, Jason.
Hey Chrissy, I'm back, and this is normally the time I would say it's nice to be here, but honestly it's not. This is the most inoffensively bad patch I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of things that I thought didn't need to be changed. There were a couple interesting things, I guess, but a lot of it just felt like your status quo gotta change shit now
A
kind of
lot of it
stuff.
is just like chat GPT, try coming up with a solution to fix something that's not broken. And yeah, they did just that, and in doing so they broke a lot of different things. I don't know if you've seen videos of all the bugs.
Of all the what?
All the videos of the bugs they introduced with 1320.
Not yet, I guess.
There's 5 different champions that Alawi can't pull the soul of now. Trindamir's hitbox on his spin scales from like ridiculously small to very small based on its level now, which is accidental. And Shaco can't jungle because you have to be near a jungle camp when it's killed. I think they have corrected a couple of those bugs with hotfixes since, but they were around for several days.
Wow. I have like no problem with any of those bugs.
Yeah.
That's
You don't think
those are
Alawi should be able to pull anyone's soul? It should
those are
just like the soul just disappear?
those are some karma bugs, man.
Yeah, I guess. But man, it's like
Eh,
this is what happens when you try to
champions.
fix all kinds of things that aren't broken and you spaghetti code it.
Eh,
And you don't have like proper regression testing either to like test every single part of a champion that you're changing or a mechanic that you're changing. Oh man, spaghetti code city.
mm, that
So
champ's
let's go
only
to the
played by.
patch and see what we got for that price. Because I don't think it was a very good sale.
Okay, first up, unless you want to talk about any of this crap up here, just gonna jump right into action.
Well, I won't go on a big rant about the pings, but they're kind of lying about why they're changing the pings,
Big
and
surprise.
this is stupid. And yeah, they always should have just made a system where you can choose what you want to put on hotkeys for your pings. The game respawn timers, that always is an interesting, not interesting, an important thing to note the change of. Early game, after level 1 up to about level uh, 11 or so, the respawn timers will be a little shorter. Just note that. And besides that, we can move to auction.
Okay. Alright, let's see. We've got Weaker Slow on his Q. That's kind of underwhelming. And his little E thing where he runs around and fires a bunch of time. The base amount is taking a hit too. I kind of feel like action is slowly moving towards like the path of Quinn, where it feels like she doesn't really belong anywhere, and the one lane she does go to, she feels kind of awkward in. I don't know why I've
Um,
never seen anyone willing to like take this guy bot. I mean,
oh, I've seen that.
Quinn
I've
could
seen
go
him go
bot and it
everywhere.
wouldn't be the worst thing ever.
He's actually been like a little bit strong sometimes. He can play top, he can play mid. He can play bot. I haven't seen that recently, but I have seen him play it a bunch in the past. Um, yeah, like I agree with you. He has kind of Quinn-ish patterns, but he can actually fight instead of just getting blown up the second he goes in. So yeah, he's a much better Quinn. Small correction: it's a nerf to the movement speed bonus that he gets, not the slow on the boomerang.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean, given that he was in a strong place for his type of champion, which is not a very good type of champion, I can see him getting nerfed a little. I don't know if maybe he's popular in pros or if he's just a pub stomper, but yeah, I mean, I'm okay with this. It's not hurting him too much.
I think he's like one of the worst champions they've come out with like the last 2 years.
In terms of power or in terms of design?
Design. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I guess he's kind of average in terms of power. I just feel like his kit just Just feels like lazy garbage, and
It's weird.
his
The
model
ultimate.
looks ugly. He's just like a very unappealing champion in all regards, in my opinion.
Well, I think you just don't like people from the Middle East.
That's right.
All right.
No, I love Lucian's one of my favorite AD carries.
He's not Middle Eastern.
Yeah, I know, but he's not
Okay.
white, so if that was your point.
No, I was saying you specifically don't like people from the Middle East, and I was kidding, of course. But yeah, I think Alshon's kit is actually kind of cool, except for the ultimate, which just seems like it's tacked on. I don't dislike him as much as you do.
I think he just has a bunch of goofy buttons.
Yeah.
A lot like Renata, but not as bad as her.
Yeah, I don't think he has quite as much of the Renata Glass problem as Renata does, but I see what you're saying. I just think that like the kit goes together a little bit better than you think it does. Anyway, yeah, he's goofy. He just got a small. This is a pretty small nerf, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so small nerf. Don't worry too much about it. If you play Akshan, if you're good at him, you can continue to be good at him. We've
Next
got a
up,
lot of like small stupid changes. Why don't we move to Belbeth?
yes. Next up, this is one of my favorite champions that's come out in the last year or two. I actually think this is one of the best design champions they've come out with recently. I think she's really cool. She has a great look. I think she's very satisfying to play. Has like a fun little like power fantasy theme going on with the late game stacks and all that. I think Belveth's really cool.
So why don't you tell the good people about what they did to her here?
Well, we got less attack speed when she uses one of her abilities. This is probably the meaningless change in this of these changes on her passive. As long as they don't mess with how much she gets attack speed from her stacks, and they didn't mess with that. That part of her kit's going to be good. And then her
Okay.
W, this took a big hit early on in terms of damage reduction, but it's
Hmm.
probably worthwhile because she gained a lot of questionable things they gave her in this. They increased like the AD ratio on this, and this thing hits you like a million times a second. And then just they increased how much value she can get from on-hit effects while she's doing this, and that's crazy too. And if that wasn't enough, now she can critically strike with this, and a lot of people run Kraken Slayer on her, so
Mm-hmm. Because
that's
she can
pretty
attack so
crazy.
fast.
A lot of
Yeah.
crazy stuff. Even if they nerf the base numbers on this a little, I don't think it'll really compensate for how this looks pretty good. The only bad thing is this is kind of the ability you wanted to max last because the damage reduction was the same at all ranks. Now
Hmm.
you're gonna kind of have to max this like second, maybe even first, because you don't really get a lot from maxing your Q, and then the base numbers on her E are so ridiculous, you kind of had to max that first or second, especially for like gank potential, because it has really high base numbers on that ability. So that definitely shakes up her leveling pattern, which I think is the most consequential change in this.
You're thinking EWQ now?
Uh, this is so core to like her like fighting pattern. I could see
Uh-huh.
people coming up with an excuse to max this first or second. Her Q
Huh?
doesn't really get very strong by putting points into it. It's so much of its damage is loaded into like its mobility and its on-hit effects and all that jazz. So
Yeah.
it's not a big deal.
All right. So we've got yeah. So it sounds like you think this is overall a buff to her or no?
Um, there's some like meaningless changes to her ultimate, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, I would say this is overall a buff. It's just kind of annoying that you can't max this last like you always used to.
Yeah.
But with the power, being able to crit and get more out of on-hit effects, I feel like this is just gonna. This will make her more of a monster at 18. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I think that the pattern here is definitely that she's going to be weaker early on and stronger later. But with that said, I feel like Belveth, and tell me if you disagree, because I still have a little bit of a hard time getting a good read on her. But I feel like Bel'Veth is a champion that really needs to leverage her early power to be relevant late.
Well, that's the thing. She basically doesn't have any early power.
But now she has even less.
Yeah, that's, well,
And I feel like
yes.
she needed to succeed in the first half of the game to really be relevant in the second. Or do you disagree?
No,
Because that's how I've always felt about her.
that's absolutely true. You definitely can't get
Yeah,
off to a slow start with her passive and stuff. And she's
yeah.
kind of just one of those jungle champions like Fiddlesticks, where you just dick off till you get to 6. And it's not that her power is gated behind her ultimate. She just needs to power farm. You know.
Yeah, I mean, so with that in mind, like my instinct is that even if she's theoretically more powerful later, that the fact that she's going to have a harder time sticking, s- staying relevant and and boosting her power through kills and items in the early part of the game is going to mean that she's going to be struggling come the later part of the game more often and might even bring her to a weaker place overall.
I don't
That's my
think that.
read on this, but I'm not sure.
I don't think that's possible. Even with like only 2 crit items, this new ability to crit on her thing is gonna just be absolutely silly. Most people
Yeah.
tend to build her like Glass Cannon anyway, which I think is a mistake. I think she has too much synergy with like on hit effects and the true damage on her ultimate to go like full damage build. I
You
think
think this
that's
is
a
gonna
big
like?
mistake.
You think this is gonna like open up any new crit items that she wouldn't have like sensibly built before?
It's definitely going to make people try it out, and I don't think you'd be wrong to try because you'd notice that and this is probably they'll throw on in the very next patch. They
Yeah.
didn't reduce the critical strike multiplier by her critical strikes when she's doing attacks in her W, so I could see them throwing that in the next patch because
Would there?
if
It would. Go on.
the fact that she's still going to do the same amount of critical strike multiplier damage as everyone else while she's in her W, that's probably something they're not going to allow for very long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even thinking something like a Navori so she can use the Royal Maelstrom more. What do you think?
I actually tried that in a custom game.
How did it go?
I think it's pretty good. I mean, anything to give your W more uptime is pretty busted.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I was kind of maybe underrating the impact of the ability to crit with Maelstrom now.
I mean, that's strong too, but the increase to the on hit effects is also strong because that also increases the damage from her ultimate true damage on her passive on her ultimate. And you know, Bork's pretty nasty on melee champions for the last couple of years, and there's just
Yeah,
a host of things that can become good on it. So
yeah. At the same time, right? It's going to be a little bit harder to build Glass Cannon in that first part of the game because you don't have like a 70% guaranteed damage reduction. Like that was how she was affording to go Glass Cannon without bursting immediately.
it will
So
be
yeah,
harder, but it's not going to stop anyone.
right. It's not impossible, and this is interesting. This is actually one of the more interesting changes of the patches of the patch.
I think she's a brilliantly designed champion.
And probably near and dear to your heart and mine as well,
I
because I think she's the first new champ that we ever did on this patch series, right?
You might be right. When if you look at my earliest splash arts, it has a picture
Uh,
of Renata, but she might have already been in the game when we started. So
ye-
you might be right.
Oh yeah, I wonder if we did. We might have like one of the really early ones done Renata Glask,
The first
or
splash
she
art
might have been
has
in the
Renata.
game. Yeah, or she might have already been in the game. You were definitely ragging on her. I just don't remember whether it was a preview or a review.
Well,
uh,
regardless, I've enjoyed playing Belveth like a number of times over like the last year or so, or since she came out. And I'm not usually a person who like quickly wants to play something that's brand new, but she's
uh-huh.
just caught my eye, and I don't know, she's just a lot of fun. She just has a really cool look and just a cool kit and just a fun little fantasy theme of powering up and going crazy with all those slappy arms and stuff in the late
Yeah, I
game.
like the way that she moves, and it can be pretty fun to just go berserk with the Maelstrom. I've never actually played her, but I don't mind having a Bell on my team,
I would definitely take her over a number of any other junglers, even if she
Oh
is
yeah,
just going to build like Glass Cannon.
especially a
Uh,
lot of the other junglers we've seen recently. Because like Glass Cannon has been en vogue. And you know who hasn't been in vogue recently? Galio.
Okay, what a segue.
Yeah. Oh man, masterful, right?
Alright, so the cooldown on this. Okay, no, I got that swapped. I think the shield timer is how long it takes for his mana or his MR shield to refresh, and then the top one is how long for the taunt cooldown. So,
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
more taunts, more shields, happier Galio.
Yeah. Ever since they nerfed his ultimate 14 times in a row, he's really been barely ever seen in
Well,
on the Rift. I think he got buffed last patch as well, and I still have not seen him during all of 12, 13, 19. So it's just not a popular champ anymore. Just too much mobility in the game for his taunt to be reliable, especially with the lacking the ability to flash taunt.
yeah,
And mhm.
they need to revert all the nerfs on his. This is his W, right? Pretty sure. Yeah. They need to
Yes.
revert all the
Yeah.
nerfs on his W shield. Because at one point, that magic shield was equal to like 20 or 25% of his max health. That thing's been reduced like 3 or 4 times. And yes, they need to make it so he can flash taunt. Because as long as a champ with as much CC and like relatively easy to land chain of CC as him exists in the game, I think he'll always have a place. And
Yeah,
I
I
actually
mean,
really like Galio. I only play him on support because I feel like he functions a lot like Leona. And with the amount of damage reduction you get on his W plus like Aftershock, I think he's still a pretty good support pick.
I would take Leona 100 times over 100 over Galio, 100 times out of 100. Like Leona's going to be able to CC people 5 or 6 times in an extended fight. Galio will be lucky if he gets two.
True, but Galio does a lot more damage, even with no AP.
Um, Perhaps, but you're not bringing a tank support for the damage they're going to bring.
No, but he doesn't have to build any extra AP to do a lot of damage. His base numbers are really strong.
I get what you're saying. I'd still rather have Leona 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, I think she's
Um,
better,
yeah,
but I
and
think
Galio, like in theory, has a place in the game, like you said, in any meta. But but really, there's just like the almost everything that he'd want to do. There's a champion that does it better, and probably several champs that do it better. And that's sad. Like I like Galio. I never mind having him on my team. But yeah, between the mobility and the fact that like any ADC with Kraken Slayer can bring him down in like 4 hits, it's just yeah, it just struggles.
yeah, he is awkward to play in a solo lane, and I think that's one of his biggest problems.
Exactly, exactly. Maybe he just needs some quality of life buffs.
No, it's
Like just
just
make it
it's
smoother
just
to
the
play.
fact that he's melee, and it's just so hard for him to farm in the solo lanes. Because if you're going mid, everyone's ranged or an assassin, and you don't want to play against that really. And if you're going top, you still have to like last hit, and then you're playing against all the melee people who want to all in you every 3 seconds.
I mean, even just
So
giving him a slightly longer attack range, like they did with stupid Tryndamere, would be a quality of life buff for Galio.
I suppose I don't think that would really solve much of it though.
No, I don't think it would solve it completely, but I'm saying they give him a bunch of quality of life buffs, right? Make his taunt a little bit more responsive. Give him the extra auto range. Um, just stuff like that. Maybe you get enough to bring him back into a playable place.
What they could do is allow his Q to like execute minions at low health, and then allow him to get some mana back from last hitting minions with his Q.
Sure.
That would definitely help him, at least in mid lane.
Or, just saying, maybe reduce his ultimate timer by about 60 seconds.
No, I don't think you want to do that because it's still at heart like a teleport, and that has a
Doesn't even
certain
give
amount of
people resistances even more anymore.
yeah, that has a certain amount of power behind it just to move, regardless of like the knockup or the damage. So,
I
uh,
suppose.
okay, next up, I guess we'll talk about this Jax change.
Okay.
So he just got a new look and everything, but this is actually some kind of new effect on his ultimate. I'm not 100% sure how this works. I haven't messed with this in game yet. Is this like while this is on, he has a chance to get money in AP, or is this just always active while he's like auto attacking? It doesn't specify here if you have to turn this on for this effect, or you just get it passively.
I mean, is this a joke? When does he catch fish?
Oh, this is his passive, not his ultimate. My bad. I think his ultimate used to be called this at one point.
When does he catch fish? Like,
I
is that
think-
like some type of like if he's standing still, like
No, I think his base skin... His base skin is like a fishing pole, technically, I think.
well, it's a lamppost. It's a lamppost, and he brought that in to protest the fact that they wouldn't let him fight with a real weapon.
Oh, okay.
I guess he fishes with it as a joke or something, but like, what is this?
I don't know, but 10 gold is enough to where if, you know, it triggered like several times over the course of a few minutes, it actually would be useful. When they
Well,
put
that's only-
stupid shit like this in the game, like with Samira, it's like 1 gold. 10
Yeah,
is
that-
enough where it would actually do something.
Well, that's only a 5% chance to catch the rare fish that gives you gold. And I'm guessing that this only happens when you're like idling or using your joke or something like that. I'm looking this up right now.
No,
If you want
this-
to filibuster it all, but
Since it's on his passive, it must just always be in effect, so think of this as just extra gold generation.
oh, if you stand in the river for 10 seconds, you start fishing. Each fish is worth 1 gold, so each fish was always worth 1 gold, but it probably only happened like every 10 seconds or something.
Oh, so this doesn't happen just from being auto-attacker?
Oh no! This does not happen when you're playing actual League of Legends.
Okay, see, the way this was worded, it seemed like it was just another part of his passive, so I'm thinking when he, like, whacked stuff, a fish would pop out or something every now and then.
No, fish don't pop out. It's a lamppost.
Okay, well, this game is stupid, so I figured it could happen.
Well, I mean, look, this is what they spent their time doing instead of regression testing, Chrissy. This is why I'm not happy to be here right now. This is
Well,
torture.
I don't really think he looked bad to begin with. I think he looked okay.
Oh my god.
I haven't
This is
seen
what
the
they
new
spent
one,
their
though.
time doing instead of regression testing and making sure that the stuff that they quote unquote fixed didn't break 10 times as many things. Like, great job. Now Alawi can pull the Briar Soul, but she can't pull the soul of like 7 manaless champions. But it's okay. Jax can catch a rare fish 5% of the time if you're standing in the river for 10 seconds. Just one more way to, like, sabotage your team. You know what? Screw
That's
this.
a-
I'm out of here.
That's a good point. I didn't take the toxicity element. I'm embarrassed. I didn't factor in the toxicity element into this change. I'm
I'm outta here.
surprised
This
I didn't
broke
say
me.
that.
I'm done. I quit.
Okay,
It is.
next up we've got
It's horrible.
Jinx.
Okay.
And this is a little more consequential. Got little more health at 18. Kind of a juicy change is now all the attack speed from takedowns,
Dax.
stacks. So this is going to let her get to like 4 or 5 or 6 attack speed for brief windows, which is going to be really silly if she gets like multiple takedowns in a quick period of time. But I don't really think I have a problem with it because that's supposed to be like her power window anyway. So big whoop.
I
And
think these are
then,
small.
as someone who's played a lot of ARAM, this buff to this Super Mega Death Rocket is kind of funny. Because you could already get this down to like preposterously low levels. And now it's the cooldown's getting dropped on this even more. This is actually just pretty funny. You could get this down to like 15, 20 seconds.
Wow.
Then I
Well-
really didn't think this needed a damage bonus, but now it's getting more damage too.
Yeah, I mean, the damage bonus is slight. It's 10% more AD ratio and essentially no more base damage. You know, these are all combining to be a nice buff for Jinx. I don't think any one thing here in particular is particularly meaningful. But all 3 together is nice.
Okay, next up we got Cassante, who got the biggest change in this thing. I guess he's turning out to actually be problematic or overpowered or underpowered. Having laned against him a number of times top lane, I think he's actually just like forgettably easy to just ignore. He's kind of a bully in the early game if you really want to fight him because of how many times you can like proc his passive, but I find him just like kind of laughably like ignorable. That being said, I think as the game goes on, I think he becomes very good in like the mid to late game when he starts stacking up like tons of resistances, and then he actually gets a lot of meaningful damage with his ultimate. I still think his ultimate's really funky, but when he does make like the conversion or whatever, he does put out like some pretty good DPS.
He puts out okay damage, yeah, and like the amount of ridiculous tankiness and disruption that he can bring if you play him well, I think does make him a little overpowered in the right context. Now he's getting a big rework here, or a big mini rework, like bigger than we normally see. And they've made Intofo strikes a little bit weaker. They've made Pathmaker a lot stronger. I think they made him a little bit tankier overall. Took down his base damage. I mean, they did so many different things here.
Yeah, this is a lot to go out with or go over. I wish we had someone like Tyler when we were talking about Rel, who could talk about this full. But
yeah,
let's start with the passive. I've played this champion a few times, so I'll let you know. Try to relate some facts here. Okay, the passive is basically the most important thing in his kit in the laning phase, because it's like his entire trading pattern to refresh his auto attacks and then tag you with that max health damage. This isn't going to get any stronger anymore when he's in his ultimate based on his resistances, so that's definitely a bummer to his kind of all-in-y nature when he busts out the ultimate, which I do think is kind of a core part of his kit, that he is able to finish someone off when he switches on his ultimate. So that's kind of a bummer, because this actually can do some pretty respectable true damage in the late game.
Okay.
There's that. And then his Q, where he just smacks the floor, and then he does a little thing that kind of sucks you into like a reverse tornado after like 3 Qs.
Mm-hmm.
We got less damage, and then we got...
Yeah, it's considerably less damage at rank 1. This is the first thing that you max?
Honestly, I've seen people max, like, I've seen people start at level 1 with all of his buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
okay, well, this is going to, once you hit rank 5, be just as powerful as it was. And plus, it also applies the slow during All Out, and I think generally gives you the opportunity to proc it more during All Out as well, right?
Well, you can slow people now. I actually thought you could do that already. I think one of the big things here is this 4th line where the stacks are reset when you cast All Out. This is actually just like Yasuo works, where he can't ult you and then immediately hit you with a tornado Q, because it'll wipe the stacks on Gathering Storm on his Q. This is definitely, since he could do that, this is definitely going to hurt his, like, 100 to 0 fantasy combo kind of thing if he can't, like, layer the CC as well now. So that's probably the biggest change in this Q, is just its inconsistency with his ultimate now.
Okay, but it does reset the cooldown if he had 2 stacks.
Yes, but if you can't do, like, the push through the wall knock-up thing and then do, like, the knock-up thing again and then do the other knock-up thing, then it doesn't really feel as good.
That does hurt him. Alright, why don't you guide us through the 14 different changes they made on Pathmaker here?
Okay.
Long story short, it's a buff.
It's a buff, you think?
Yeah.
Alright. This is so much crazy shit. Looks like we got way more damage, but I think that compensate for not holding it down as long as it used to. And then it has way more damage reduction, but that's probably compensated by something else down here. And then you get more damage reduction than that when you use this during his ultimate. And then the CC is always at 1.25 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so crazy. Let's see. Let's just go to what's new about it. Now has base damage.
The damage does scale with his armor and magic resist. That's probably important to mention.
Yep.
All right.
And then all this other stuff at the bottom is removed. Okay,
So goofy.
So you think this is a big buff?
I do think this is a big buff to that skill in particular. It probably compensated for like a little bit of less early game damage on the Q.
So why do you think the W needed to be changed?
I have no idea.
He is really impressive when he gets like a lead in lane. If he can get like Iceborne Gauntlet like pretty fast, and you're like someone that's kind of in the same class of champion that he is like he suddenly does become very oppressive to like lane against, even though he's not really doing much at any one time. He basically just can trade endlessly is kind of his shtick.
Yeah, he has good sustain, and he's very hard to gank because he has like just enough movement to get out, and he survives long enough to use all that movement.
Okay, next we got his E, which is the only thing that didn't receive 10 changes. This is where he dashes, gets a shield. If he shields someone else, he gets a bigger shield. Oh, this just doesn't...
Yeah, it's just not an auto reset anymore, right?
Lots of quality of life nerfs here for him that he was probably abusing at a high level before. I read this stuff and I see like, you know, a lot of this looks like it's targeted at playing him at a very high level, the kind of things that smarter players abuse, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You know, especially for something like the auto reset. You know, that's not something that they would normally take at unless it was abusable. Maybe on a champ like this, it is abusable because you know his attacks are becoming buffed as compared to if Cho'Gath gets an auto reset, that's not that bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Alright, and now we're at his ultimate. Now, I guess, the initial component where he, like, pushes you through walls and then appears behind you and, like, bonks you on the head, that is now magic from physical. That's probably relatively, completely irrelevant. It doesn't really matter that he does magical or physical damage, because he doesn't really have any way to capitalize on either one, because he's so kind of locked into just building tank and especially building armor and MR that's pretty irrelevant. Plus, the damage component of that part of the ability isn't really that great, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like in theory, it'll make it a little easier for him to damage an opponent tank that's building all armor against him. But in practice, like you said, this isn't really much of his damage. There's such a weird skill to it. It always looks like the game is like bugging out every time he uses it.
Alright, so the big things I'm seeing here is while it seems to have less what do you call it, scaling in some of this stuff, has better base numbers. It looks like we got base, yeah, you just get flat attack damage. The big thing here, you got like flat attack speed during the duration, and now it, instead of just giving blanket omnivamp based on a percentage of whatever it was before, now he just gets a percentage of whatever, or a sustain based on his physical damage. And then how this true damage is dealt to enemy champions during the... I'm not even sure how that works. This looks kind of confusing to read.
But here's what's really important. A 65% AP ratio for all those AP Malphite clowns who want to try it with K'Sante now.
Yeah, that would be a pretty big mistake.
It's 130% if you hit someone into a wall.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of these.
K'Sante, make it happen, guys.
I don't know really what to make of all these changes. In a way, it actually seems like he'll be even more feisty in his ultimate, and then maybe his laning phase is just even worse. I don't know.
The early laning phase might be worse. I do think that, like, for most of this is a buff. You look at the fact that he's getting, like, bonus attack speed instead of, like, a couple of auto resets. It reduces the, the skill requirement, to, like, use the combos perfectly. Yeah, there's a lot of little changes here, but overall, and the Omnivamp, I think, is a significant thing, on the All-Out, losing that. But overall, I'd say probably a small buff. or even a moderate buff to his kit overall. And I don't know, Cassante is such like a needlessly complex, and I don't mean mechanically, I don't mean in terms of actually playing him, but in terms of just like his design and all the like the little stupid numbers that they have on him, that I don't find them fun to analyze. And quite honestly, I don't want to spend more than 3 seconds of my breath on this guy.
Well, he didn't really lose the Omnivamp. There must have been another source that people were abusing because they just shifted his Omnivamp into just physical and true damage in one of the new effects. So there was probably something stupid he was abusing at some point for them to make that change.
Oh, yeah, okay, so it gives him healing based on the physical and true damage that he deals.
Yeah, his passive does true damage when his
Well, since they
ultimate is
changed
on.
the type of this from physical to magic, now it won't Omnivamp itself.
No, that's just the initial CC component. This is talking about like this, his auto attacks and his Q when he's using during his ultimate. That first thing
Right,
when they
but in the
changed.
past, didn't he gain health back when he used this for the damage that he dealt? No, he
Uh,
doesn't.
yeah, I guess
Right?
you're right. Yeah, that's true.
All right.
And that was probably. Yeah, that's true. I think that
Yeah,
was a pretty inconsequential component, but
I agree. Like why they felt the need to do that, it's quite honestly ridiculous.
okay. Next up, let's just talk about Milo.
Okay.
Alright, we're getting some more buffs on this dude. He's gotten a slew of buffs lately. I don't really think anything's going to save him too much. He's going to need like 3 years of buffs like Bard got before I think he's up to someone I would want supporting me. So, is there a
Yeah,
point
this
to this?
isn't.
Is there a point to this passive change?
Yeah, it's the fact that your ally won't get the bonus damage and therefore won't be able to get as much lifesteal or other like damage amps from it.
And that's good.
No, that's a nerf.
Okay.
The other two are a buff, and overall this is a buff, but not by much because like his ultimate gives you 20% more AP ratio. Normally you don't see Milios build a lot of AP. So maybe if he has 150 by the end of the game, whoop, you get another 30 healing for you and your allies when you use her ult. Compared to Soraka, who has a 65% AP ratio on her ult globally, and that also scales, I think, up to double if they're low on health. Might be up to 1.5. I think it's double. And the Warm Hugs is nice, like 20 extra shield at max rank, and particularly a 1 second lower recharge. That is nice, right? I agree with you though. This is not nearly enough to save Milio. His passive and his just ability to amp his allies' auto attacks was reduced by like 65% from where it was when he came out. And he wasn't even that great when he came out.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that his passive is the most important thing in his kit. So any hit at his passive.
It certainly was when he came out.
Well, I mean, as far as the laning phase is considered, which I think is the only point in the game where he has relevance, I still think his passive is the most important thing in his kit. Just because
I don't think so. I think it's the thing that gives you more range.
that's true too.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
it has
obviously
such
they
an
work hand
insane
in hand.
cooldown.
Obviously they work hand in hand. But like the passive is so minimal now. I don't even think it's that. I mean, I don't even think it's that significant, quite honestly.
You're right. At these current numbers, you're right. It might be just laughable
Yeah,
now.
certainly when it came out, it was powerful. I think this is honestly one of the worst champs that they've designed in the last 5 years, and quite honestly, like some roles they've done a good job with the new champions. I think jungler, for example, they've done a good job with the new champions in the last few years. Support, they really seem to be struggling. I mean, you've got Renata Glass, you've got Milio, you've got Yumi. There's a lot of disasters. Even
Okay.
Seraphine, who I actually like. Most
Why?
people don't think that was a successful champion.
I think Seraphine is a very well designed champion. Renata definitely lost cause. I don't like her. Now Yumi, I think the idea was salvageable. They just really haven't gotten her to the place where I guess it's palatable. Now Milo, I actually kind of have the same take on. I like Milo's abilities. I think they
Hmm.
just needed to like just let him kind of run amok. You know, it's kind of
Even
what I
when,
said when we were first talking about him when he came up. One of the first things I said was, I think this champion will be way too strong in
uh
like the higher echelons of league because his abusiveness in like the laning phase for like trading patterns is
yeah.
going to be stronger than like any support there's ever been. But for everyone else in the game, I think he's going to be like kind of laughably like bad.
My problem with Milio, like besides that, the idea that he's so powerful with like a couple different champions that they ended up having to nerf him a bunch of times and make him useless with not only those champions but especially all the others. My bigger problem with Milio is that he's just boring. I played him several times when he was new. I was like, oh good, nice friendly support, kind of like his aesthetic and whatever. And and it's been a while since we've had like a real enchanter that wasn't, crappy Yumi. So I played him. I was kind of excited to play him, and then I played him a few times. I got some easy wins when my teammates were good, some, unsalvageable losses when my teammates were bad. But overall, it was just really boring. It was just like you click your allies. That's pretty much all you do.
Yeah, he is kind of like a 2012 champion.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So
Like he
I
could have
really
been
don't think they
released
know how to
after
design
Nami
sports
and
anymore. Like I think, maybe if I had to guess, maybe a couple of the champion designers who designed some really spicy supports seasons like 4, 5, 6, 7 have probably left. And maybe all the designers that they've hired recently have been ones that have just liked other roles more. And then, the lead gameplay designer comes to them once a year and is like, guys, we do kind of have to, design the support. And they're like, okay. And then they just don't go real high effort on it.
well, I think they're trying to make support less supporty, and they're trying to make more supports like Brand, you know. And then
So you're
Milo,
thinking
I
like
think, was
Seraphine?
like an attempt to Seraphine. I think they honestly expected her to have more pull in the mid lane. Uh,
Okay.
for
So really, what
Milo,
was
I
the last
think
support that had high damage? I mean, Senna and Pike, maybe?
I didn't say they had to have high damage. I think they want to make them more like playmaking oriented instead of
Okay.
kind of old style, you know, Nami,
So not more like
Lulu,
Brand, but more
Janna.
like Thresh.
Sure, I guess.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah. But again, I think they've missed the mark most of the time.
Yeah. Uh, I don't have a problem with Milo's kid. I just think his numbers are terrible. Seraphine, I love, and yeah, I would agree that Yumi is either just unhealthy or just garbage. Uh, Renata, I just think is awkward, but she clearly has moments where she's powerful.
All right, now here's one of my favorite supports in the game, and they're making some changes here to make her a little less of a support, although she'll still continue to be very good at support.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I looked at these changes and I was kind of didn't like what I saw because I
Morgana's.
honestly think Morgana is like probably one of the most balanced champions in the entire game.
I would
Uh,
generally agree with you on that. I have noticed it seems like it's harder to win with her. I've been playing a bunch of Morgana support in the last year, and it really just seems like I have to do more and more and more each month to win with her, even though it feels like she's very powerful as I'm playing her.
I think she is
So
still
I'm okay with
powerful.
this. Now,
I
what's
don't
interesting
know.
here is like these changes are like mostly for mid lane and jungle.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about because I
Uh,
think this change to her ultimate specifically, and now landing a Q is going to be even more like damning with the buffs to her W. Black Shield is always absurdly powerful, so I don't really have a problem with that nerf. Uh, I don't know. I think this is going to make her just so punishing to make mistakes against mid lane that
uh-huh.
this it's like the conspiracy. It's like put my tinfoil hat on. She's gonna. This is just gonna make her get like a bunch of changes in the future because these are such overbearing like mid lane changes. You know.
These are big changes. Like, so just to reset a little bit, higher AP ratios on the W, as well as higher monster damage on the W to make Morgana jungle easier. But we're up from 190% if you hit the W for all 5 seconds, which is very possible to do if you land like a bind stun combo. And they're at low health, up from 190% over the 5 seconds to 230% of your AP. We've got the Black Shields with slightly longer cooldown, so that's a small nerf. And then Soul Shackles, considerably more damage, 50 more damage at all levels if you hit the whole combo. 10 to 20% more AP, depending on whether you hit the whole combo. More movement speed, including if you're moving away from enemy champions, which means it's easier to escape and be a bitch after your R. But it's also easier, like if you're like trying to like juke skill shots while holding them on the leash. Now you won't be penalized by losing the bonus movement speed, so that's kind of cool.
I think I actually liked it that she only got it when she was going towards somebody.
I did, but like part of the change here is good in terms of like if you're juking people, you know, while trying to keep them on the leash, you'll be able to do that. Although most of the time you don't need to juke people on the leash because you've black shielded yourself. Most importantly, though, I don't want to bury the lead here. The stun duration now scales with the rank in your R. So 2 seconds at max rank, in addition to the 3 seconds max rank on your bind, means that you can bind someone, start your ultimate, you know, stun them with your ultimate because they can't get out of it because they were bound, and then wait 2 seconds after the stun, almost, to fire your bind at them, keeping them bound for another 3 seconds after that. It's CC City.
Don't forget about Everfrost.
You'd be an idiot to buy Everfrost on Morgana.
What's wrong with Everfrost?
The fact that you don't get Liandry's ticking for like 14 seconds while they're in your W?
The good old Liandry's trap item, man. Everyone thinks that thing is so
Liandry's
good.
is not a trap on Morgana. Morgana is Liandry's essentially. You go tier if you start mid lane, I believe. You always go Liandry's as your first item after that.
Problem is, people don't think there's a choice. People think that it's like the only thing you can do on so many champions. The calculation a lot of people don't make is that it doesn't make your abilities do more damage, like all the magic pen items do. You're just pushing your damage into like a longer duration with the dots.
Yeah, you get to damage someone for like 11 seconds.
Yeah, but if all the magic pen items make your buttons do more damage, people think there's not a choice. There's a choice.
There is not a single Morgana game that I've played where like the W hasn't killed someone that would have otherwise gotten away. Sorry, the Liandry's hasn't killed someone that would have otherwise gotten away.
But that just means your W would have done a lot more damage.
Not necessarily. I mean, the Liandry's also brings a lot of AP.
I know, but I don't know. I just feel like people don't realize. People are so stuck on Liandry's for like a good handful of champions. I'm not saying it's bad on her.
Yeah, I think any champion with a DOT, there might be exceptions in the game, but I can't think of any at the moment. I think every champion in the game with a DOT, you know, that is a magic damage champion, obviously, you know, not in a Fury, should be building Liandry's. Not only that, like, you know, someone like Morgana, right? Often you can, once you have Liandry's, you can just, especially if you built tier early on, so you don't need to worry about the mana, you just throw down the W to poke someone, even if you can't hit them with a bind. Like, if they're standing in the middle of a wave, you only hit them for like 1 second, you barely do any damage with the skill, but the Liandry's ticks away 11-12% of their health. Good luck doing that with any other item.
I just feel like in this day and age where they've added over time a lot more items than in the old days that give magic pen, you can basically run a build that has like 5 items that either have magic pen or amplify your magic damage in a way that's essentially the same effect as magic pen. That I think it's just kind of a trap item for like a lot of champions now. I think a lot of people are so obsessed with, I'll get Demonic Embrace and Liandry's, and then me dot go make lots of small numbers. And then, like, I don't know, I think it's a trap people fall into. But there's so many powerful magic pen items now that didn't exist for like the vast history of the game, because the game was just balanced around, okay, we have Sorcerer Sues and we have Void Staff. And then the last few years, now we have all these extra magic pen items with like the mythics and then the items you can get now that aren't even, that are legendaries that have magic pen on them, that I feel like it's kind of a calculation a lot of people just flat out ignore now.
I go Tyr, Leandries, and I'll skip Tyr if I'm playing support. Leandries, Zanyas, Sorkshu is usually after Zanyas, in fact. I think those first two items are so corridor that I actually sit on the basic boots until I have two full items. And then usually Cosmic Drive, just because cooldown reduction is so good on her. And then from there, it's kind of choose your own adventure. I'll often build up the Archangel Staff if I built Tyr. Otherwise, it could really be anything. It could be the Demonic Embrace. It could be the Horizon Focus. But I feel like Leandries and Zanyas are just non-negotiable as the first two, personally.
Zarya's I definitely think is good.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a moot point. I think she's such a well-designed character that she's pretty much effective with, like, the goofiest of shit. For the most part.
Yeah, and surprisingly, I don't think has a particularly high win rate, despite that.
Yeah.
Now, tell me why they nerfed Quinn.
Oh, God only knows. Let's see. Oh, no. Less movement speed. That's the one thing you can't do to her. I'd say,
Right?
I don't care about this other crap. Well, she's gotta have that roam potential, or she's, like, got no reason for, like, even existing, right?
Obviously, she's still fast in her ult, but, like, yeah, like...
Anything, something.
Taking down the base movement speed once she gets there, like, this hurts. Like, Quinn's not a good champion.
Thing is, I don't know why people don't play her bot too. I mean, there's
Because
not.
she sucks.
She's worse probably, but I don't think she's so bad that people shouldn't be doing it. Like last year, there was like a week where I played all of the goofy 80 carries bot, and a lot of them were pretty easy to have a good game with. I played like several games of Kindred bot, I played several games of Quinn bot, I played several games of Gnar bot, and Jace. Jace was like the best one, I think. I played a bunch of games. Jace, I actually played in a few ranked games over time.
I'll tell you why I don't think. I'll tell you why I don't. And this is just a theory, but I'll tell you why I don't think she would be good bot. A lot of her power is in her ability to roam, and an ADC roaming is not going to be able to affect the bot lane because they're already supposed to be there. They're going to make it go from a 2-on-2 to a 2-on-2. The mid lane is going to have an easy time getting out of her gank if she tries to roam from bot to mid. And then she can't make it to top because it's just too far away.
Well, everyone just likes to push their balls off, so you push up, her Q is AoE damage, so that lets her push better than some 80 carries at least.
Still, to some extent, if you told me I had to have a frickin' Quinn on my team, I'd probably say, okay, put him in ADC so I could at least get a tank top.
That's exactly what I would say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel too bad about it. I mean, I think if the player has good 80 carry mechanics and they're building like hyper carry and not like lethality or something, I think Quinn did just fine.
I think she loses more games than Dan Quinn.
I think her special... I think her special... her passive scales really well with like AD and crit, so... I don't know. I think it's a missed opportunity. I think her range is maybe kind of poor. Maybe that's a reason why she hasn't played much bot. But I don't think her range is vastly like inferior or superior to like Lucian's or something. Like Lucian has kind of short range too.
Yeah, but Lucian also can like can also sling spells and attack a lot more often than she can.
Yep.
So it's like you need one or the other, I think. You need range or you need, you know, like like very quick, consistent DPS uptime.
Yep, maybe.
Alright. Here's that undocumented change where they screwed everything up on 1320, where Tryndamere's hitbox is now 80 to 200 based on the ability rank. 80 means he basically needs to be humping the thing he's spinning at.
Big whoop.
And yeah, Like, seriously, guys, just create a debug tool for your staff, show the hitboxes for every skill, and test the skill when you make a change. All right. Who's next? Zed?
Yep, Zed.
Zed's a champion that we compliment a lot on this series. Just because he's a champion that was an early design, not overly complicated, but offers a lot of skill expression, and has always been pretty balanced. Never needed any big changes. Um, this 3 second higher cooldown at max rank on Living Shadow is probably the biggest change we've seen to him since we started the series.
Yeah, probably couldn't
Even
afford
then,
to
it's
get
not
his
huge.
W nerfed, honestly. This is kind of what allows him to be aggressive in lane or safe in
Mhm.
lane at the same time. So
Yeah, this
having
is a
more
max
down
rank
up,
nerf though.
yeah,
In lane, he usually doesn't have this max, does he?
I guess not.
I feel like this is more for late game when he's, just, going all over the map and getting in and then getting out after a quick assassination, even when the entire like enemy team is trying to collapse on him. And he's very, very good at that. I've actually seen Zed on my team and on the enemy team be super effective and carry games where I wouldn't normally expect him to. I also see him feed every once in a while, but I do think that he is an overpowered champion right now just because of the state of the game. And I like this nerf. I think it's fair.
Eh, kind of like Morgana. I think he's been pretty much in a good place for a very long time. I don't think he's as balanced as Morgana,
Uh-huh.
but I do think he's fine the way he is.
Yeah, I think for a long time he was like one of the better assassins when assassins weren't good. And now he's one of the better assassins when assassins are good. And so, yeah, he's just kind of hovering a little too far above like the mean. And it'll be a little bit easier to catch now. Like if you see a Zed going in on your teammate, it's worth it to chase him more often than it used to be. And then we've got this stupid change to Ziggs.
I don't think this is stupid. This has like a very tight window to begin with to
Yeah.
compensate probably for its very, very low cooldown. I don't think this is stupid. This is going to help him clear a little easier when before he could probably hit all the casters, all the melee minions. Now it definitely will when
Well,
it
this
blows
is
up.
this is one of two skills in the game, I believe. I forget what the other one is. That uses like an ad hoc physics engine. That actually like the bomb can go directly into you, and because it's like in the air or just like bounced in a weird way, it actually doesn't hit you. It'll go through you.
Well, that's
And
not
the collision.
necessarily true. If it hits you straight on, it'll always blow up. It's just that if it
No.
bounces right in front of you, then it can go over you.
Well, if it bounces in front of you, and then like ag- yes, if it bounces in front of you, and if you're just thinking of the skill shot as a line, goes right through you.
Yeah, I'm not
It
sure
won't
it's
hit you.
quite that simple, but that is the gist of it.
Right. So like I don't know. I wish they would just basically recode this to work like a regular kind of linear skill shot,
I don't
and then
know.
not have to make this stupid change with the collision radius where sometimes it's gonna hit you and sometimes it doesn't, even though it goes through you in a line. That's how I feel about it, but it seems like you don't feel the same way.
I don't feel like it kind of is too problematic for him, especially with the low cooldown of this ability. And I don't think it affects like his ability to clear really much.
I don't like playing roulette when I
I
try
gotta
to
be honest,
hit
I don't really
somebody
have a
with it.
problem with it because if you just like if you just hit someone straight on, it'll never bounce over them. It only bounces over them if you do it too far or too close, and I think that's just part of picking up Ziggs, you know? I don't know.
When you say straight on, you mean the first bounce lands on them?
Yeah, like it doesn't bounce at all, it just goes right on top of them, it always blows up.
Sure, but like it bounces pretty quickly. You'd have to be in very low range to do that. I think it bounces at maybe, I don't know, 30, 40, 45, probably about 30 or 40% of its max range.
No, it bounces directly where you target it anywhere in his range. The bounce does where it receives the first bounce there isn't a correlation between how far he throws it and when it receives the first bounce. The first bounce is always where he targets it. That's why he can throw it at his max range.
I actually
and
just
then
looked it up. It's about
it'll-
55% of max range. The target range is 850, so that's the farthest you can throw it. The max range is 1400, so it's about 55%.
Well, he can throw it at his max range and it'll still bounce like a few times outside of his max range. So.
Correct.
Okay, next up we've got some item silliness and then some jungle silliness.
Oh yeah.
I don't even think I want to talk about jungle pets. I kind of like to just pretend they're not in the game.
Okay. You want me to give you like the 5-second summary then?
Sure.
Okay. Tanks should be a little bit better in the jungle. AD junglers are not really being hurt by this, but they're obviously going to be a little bit less appealing in comparison to tanks. The sustain in the jungle is going up slightly. The clear times are becoming a little bit longer, and it's harder to poach if you're a laner. Okay.
So, is this gonna overall make jungling take longer or slow it down?
It's gonna slow it down by a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right.
Slow it down by a little bit, but I would say it's still a little bit better for tanks because they're still getting their bonus damage from their pet, and they're going to be a little bit healthier coming out.
Okay, next up, the thing that builds into only Void Staff is getting a little cheaper, so you can just sit on it, kind of like the Execution or Grievous Wounds items. Don't think this affects Void Staff overall, but I guess it's kind of cool. You can just sit on it now for cheaper.
I bet they'll find that they like messed up how the magic penetration works now that they made a change to this.
Why would that happen? Just
because it's
goofy?
Riot with Spaghetti Code, and they don't test.
Okay, I mean, someone would literally have to go in there and like change the value on Void Staff for them to make that mistake. I'm like, well, we made this 13. Let's go accidentally make that 47.
There's no way the input tools are laid out that easily. It's probably like some like dumb ratio of like gold to AP or something.
That sounds way too complicated.
Okay.
Okay, Dark Soul gets more health, Doran's Blade gets more health and damage, Doran's Ring gets more AP and health, just a buff to all the starter items, Doran's Shield gets more health, Doran's Shield's its regen gets buffed, but it's already shit on ranged people and it's been nerfed 20 times, so that's kind of a moot point. And then we get down to something a little more interesting. Dustblade loses some of its cooldown reduction, that's a bummer, since that's its synergy also. And what else?
Dustblade is like a really popular item still. I mean, no matter how much they keep nerfing it, no matter how much they take away the invulnerability effects and make it so that you're simply untargetable, it just keeps being extremely popular. It's got a lot of AD, it's got a lot of lethality, it's got ability haste on it, it's got, the untargetable is still really good. And possibly most importantly, it's just like very good value and can be used on a lot of different champions that you wouldn't expect. I saw a Vi using it the other day, and she dominated. Every time she would get a kill, it would just be impossible to get to her before she queued again. Especially with some of the other lethality items that also reset your abilities and let you go in for a second assassination or get out. Like, Dustblade is such a strong item, and it's a cool item. I don't want to see it removed from the game. Like, I fear like it might be at the end of this season, but they just keep having to nerf this thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's very popular because of its.
I think Garen's used this successfully.
Yeah. When an item starts being used,
not be using assassin items.
I think when an item starts being used by champions way outside of its intended class, that's probably when they're going to start doing something funky.
Right.
they're obsessive about making like keeping everyone in line and no one can have
I'd like to
more
see
than
like this
one build.
passive move to an item that has no AD or AP.
Well, why would you like? Then you'd have to
To
get it
open it
like
up to every champ in the game that wants to use like the escape creatively.
third or something. Then probably.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of cool. This would be like a luxury item for like very specific types of playmaking. As it
I
is,
wish there was
it's
also like an AD version of like Sonya's Hourglass and like an AP version of like Guardian Angel.
yeah, that would be nice. I mean, Guardian Angel used to be no offensive stat item. It was just armor and magic resist, I think.
You are correct.
So that was something that everybody could buy if they wanted to. And they specifically decided we only want physical champs to have access to this for some reason.
Yeah, that was dumb. They should have just made two of them right then and there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was definitely intentional. I forget what the reasoning was. There was some reasoning, and I didn't really agree with it.
They made one build out of like BF Sword. They should have immediately made one build out of Needlessly Large Rod.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Duskblade is a cool item. It's just, it's amazing how many times they have to nerf it. Like, this is the Milio of items. Just every patch, more nerfs to Duskblade.
Alright, next up, the blue pet. Let's see here. Less movement
They really
speed.
nerfed that.
I think those are still good enough numbers to warrant whatever the hell person was taking them.
Yeah,
I
I
try
still
to.
like it less than red and green. And I like it even more less than red and green now.
And then we got a nerf to Lord Dominic's Regard. This one I don't like because I think it's important that the niche items that are meant to counter like one specific thing, I think it's important that at all times they always remain like very effective. So I don't approve of nerfing like the one-off items that are meant to counter like one specific thing. Kind of like Randuin's, stuff like that.
Yeah, this is silly. They're keeping Kraken Slayer the same, for its like ridiculous ability to take down tanks. But no, let's nerf Lord Dominic's Regards. It was doing too much against the tanks.
Yep, Kraken Slayer is silly. They need to just change that to magic damage or get rid of it. Alright, next up we got the green jungler pet. We got more shield and no more tenacity. Oh well.
Yeah, like early game, this is definitely a buff. Late game, probably a nerf. In fact, certainly a nerf. When that tenacity could be thousands of extra damage you're taking. I don't know. Overall, like, would you say this came out the best of the three pets in this patch? Or would you say that that red, by having no real changes, probably came out the best?
I'm not
Like, is this
ashamed
a
to
nerf
admit
overall?
I'm not
Uh-huh.
ashamed to admit that I do everything I can to avoid playing the jungle because I just find it to be the most goofy, chaotic position in the game that's just like I feel like so much of the game is taken out of your hands in the jungle. I know a lot of people would probably argue the opposite.
Yeah, I think
I
it has the
just
highest agency, but I think it's also a boring position.
yes. Um, I just feel like you have to be too proactive for like one person to like tilt the game in your favor, and then even if you do, a lot of times it just still doesn't matter. I just find jungle to be just an inherently problematic and overly frustrating position.
Agreed, and I've always said I think we should keep the jungle, but remove the jungler role.
Yeah, I don't think that'll ever happen, but
I don't think it's going to happen either, but I think it would make it a better game.
I wouldn't mind if there was a big shakeup to have a jungler opt into doing something secondary. Unfortunately, I think it would just encourage too much like clownish behavior, probably.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm not with like the bi-perennial massive changes that the jungle gets like every year. I think it's just stupid now.
Yeah, I mean, they've found it completely impossible to balance the jungle to a satisfying state. They've been trying for 10 years. They've failed
I
And
don't
I don't
think
even want to say
they're.
they failed miserably. Like, it's a hard thing to do
I don't
because the
think they're
entire
trying.
concept of the jungler is broken.
I don't think they're trying. I think they just keep wanting to change it to keep jungling meta
I think they're trying. I think they don't know
changing.
how. I think they're just come at a complete lack of knowledge for how. They keep
Well,
identifying a lot of tiny little things that are pain points, but they don't really see the source that flows into all those pain points.
I think you're just assuming that they're operating in good faith. I think, I mean,
I
I
am.
think it's safe to say League of Legends is probably reached like the top of the hill at this point in terms of popularity, and can only go down from this point. And I think they're just so desperate to keep the pro scene as fresh as possible that they're never going to stop making these like wide scale changes to the jungler. And I think evidence of that is because every season we see them try to force goofy champions into the jungle to spruce things up. Like, did
Why do
you
you
think
think
we'd be
that?
seeing Morgana jungle like 3 or 4 years ago? Pfft, no.
No, and I still don't see it.
Well, my point is, we don't see it, but they want it.
Uh,
You know.
right, but again, my point is they're trying to make new things there. I think they're operating in good faith. They have no idea how to. Morgana is not a great jungler because she just doesn't have the tools to jungle or even really to duel in the jungle.
And they
You know,
buff that because they still
Garen
want it.
and Darius, who they tried to shove into the jungle, are never going to be useful junglers because they don't have gap closers. You know, nor do they have significant CC really. Like, you know, they're doing things in good faith, but they're doing dumb things and they don't understand either the source of the problems or the long-term consequences that they're causing by shoehorning things into places that they don't belong.
I think that same patch that they wanted Morgana to start jungling, they also wanted Brand to start jungling, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, good luck actually, like, running someone down by hitting them with a skill and then hitting them with your slow Q.
Yeah,
You know, don't worry about the the Nocturne or the or the Briar that's running at you, counter jungling you. Don't worry about the Vi that's going to Q through your W, so you have no way to hit her. But no, ooh, you get extra damage against monsters. Yeah, I honestly think it's done in good faith. It's just very, very foolhardy.
well, first off, I don't think every jungler has to come down to how good they are only at ganks or how good they are versus counter jungling. I think one of the first examples was like Nunu was like one of the first junglers in the game. He's obviously no like 1v1 champion, and he's
He's the
not.
best counter jungler in the game.
That's what I'm saying. That was his like shtick.
Uh-huh.
He's not really a good fighter. He's like a good I'm gonna eat your shit and run away kind of thing, you know. So I don't think every jungler has to be
He's also a good
amazing.
ganker. He's also a good ganker.
He is now. I don't think he was for most of his lifetime when all he did was do the snowballs, you know.
Well, he is now, and I mean, many, many years ago, right? Like, clear speed was much more important than it is now because you don't have pets. You know, you didn't have, like, big explodey smites. So just like your natural clear speed was really important back in the day. And in addition to that, like, the jungler was harder back in the day, so, his ability to stay sustained and clear the jungle quickly was really important. And then they kind of modernized him by making him better at ganks. But I think in the last like 7 years, to be a decent jungler, you need gap closer, you need CC, you need dual potential, and nice to have is quick clear speed and counter jungle potential. And maybe you can get away without one of those first three if you have one of those nice to haves, but you need at least two of those three. Simply having, high clear speed and having none of those first three, like Brand, like Garen, like Darius, to some extent like Morgana, is not going to make a jungler.
That's why I feel like you're just basically arguing my point, my original point, for everything you're saying. That's why I don't think they're operating in good faith towards like jungle changes. is because they do such stupid things just to
Okay,
shake
so
up
we
the
see
meta.
some of the same mistakes, but I guess I'm using Hanlon's razor here, right? Never attribute to malice what
Which
could be
is
properly explained
stupidity.
away by stupidity.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um,
How many
and
years do we expect them to be stupid instead of deliberate, though? Come on, man.
for the jungle, I expect it until Kingdom Come.
So, this game could go on for another 20 years, and they could still make goofy jungle changes, and we expect it to just be innocent stupidity that now they want Teemo to be the premier jungler. That's just stupidity.
I think we'll get to that level at some point. Yeah.
That's just naive to have that take, man. At some point, you got to realize that they just want to make the jungle more accessible and have more goofy champs to like shake up the meta in there. I think the whole game's going towards ARAM anyway. All right, let's go towards. We won't even talk about this. All the support items, you get a minuscule amount of health and a minuscule amount of damage.
Mm-hmm.
So I
That's
guess
correct.
that feels good
And
for.
that's only on the first level as well. All the other
Oh,
levels are unchanged.
oh man, that didn't even occur to me. That's a bummer. Would have been nice for the third or the final form to get like a 20% buff across the board. I always felt like the final form items of all of these were kind of underpowered for having to sit on them the rest of the game.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the cost for having the Sightstone.
And then turns out Void
And then
Staff is
yeah,
more expensive. Oh no, this is just.
and then we've got more
Oh,
lethality on
whatever.
Yomu's Ghostblade, because even though it's a giant stack of stack of stats, it's still not comparing to Duskblade.
Yeah, honestly, if this is its niche, though, I'm okay with it. That there be like a pure offensive choice where Duskblade is like the more survivability choice. That's fine with me. It's not as
Yeah, but
crazy as it was when it first got reworked. I think it was like 10 to 22 or something back then.
yeah, it was something pretty big. And even then, I think Duskblade was probably more popular, right? I mean, I know it was really pretty popular in the first one or two patches after it got reworked and buffed, but I think Duskblade was still ahead of it. Yomu's
That
just
very
never been
first
able
patch,
to.
no way, man. Yumu's was where it was at. That very first patch that got changed. I mean, that item gave like 40 lethality, man. That was crazy.
It was really good, but so was Duskblade. Yeah, maybe Duskblade took it over after its first nerf. All
All
right,
right,
we've done all the
time for
champs and all the items, and we're still not even close to being done. Let's go through all these other changes.
the rest of this shit. I'm not really going to talk about a lot of the next things we talk about specifically
Okay?
because I feel like they're all kind of operate under the same premise. Talk about the summoner, the smite changes, and that's about as specific as I want to get.
Yeah.
What's the point of these smite changes?
The point of the smite changes is you never want to use smite on enemy champions or pets anymore. Maybe at like level 3 or something while you're fighting them. But then you can't use it on champions anyway. Yeah, the point of these smite changes is you never want to use it for damage against enemy champions or pets anymore. It's as simple as that.
And why
I
don't you
don't know
want to
why
do
they
that?
didn't just remove the ability to smite enemy champions. Now you can accidentally smite them for 40 damage, so you don't have your smite for an epic objective.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it's
And
not.
I'm okay with this. I always found it dumb that, like to die to smite of all things.
Well, wait a minute there. You say that the damage is terrible, but if I'm not mistaken, the whole point of smiting an enemy champion is to get the final effect on like your jungle pet, which has like the smite bonus effect, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I think the damage component is kind of not hugely significant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess, but like
When the pets eat camps, the pets level up. When they get to their final form, they give like a bonus effect towards your smite.
yeah.
Well, I think those are still more potent than just examining this from the damage component alone.
I suppose.
I'm not saying those are great, but I'm saying that you have to look at this way more than just the damage. You feel
Yeah,
me?
I still think it's pretty niche when you'll want to do it, right? Because you're giving up not only your jungle clear to do it, but also you're having a smite for an epic objective.
Yeah, I hear you. I do think it's
It's
not
doing
as
very,
useful in the
very
late
little.
game.
It's doing very, very, very little damage. So you better make good use of that epic effect.
All right, and now we get into the runes section, and I don't know what they were smoking for all this shit. Basically, the gist of it just seems like the base numbers got a decent buff, and then the scaling got an absolutely like Herculean nerf, and I don't know the reason for any of this. Because I gotta be honest, the only thing I thought of is they made like every keystone much better on supports, and then basically much worse on everyone else. And
Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's less about the keystones and more about the damage. From runes is what they got rid of. Like, this is not gonna hurt, Glacial Augment. This is not gonna hurt Freeboots users. This is not gonna hurt Grasp of the Undying users.
well, I'm talking about the ones they
Which actually
changed.
did not take a damage nerf even. This is just about like the offensive damage. And I find this all pretty stupid because they increased the base damage and they took the AD and AP ratios to like 5%. Okay? At that point, you might as well just add 10 extra damage at level 18 and call it a day and remove the AD and AP ratios. Those are insulting, and all they do is just make it a little harder to figure out how much damage you're actually doing. I think the point of this, if I had to guess, um, is to probably reduce the amount of snowballing in the game. Because this way, like, obviously, as you get more items from snowballing, you have more AD and AP, and therefore even your runes are doing more damage. If the runes are more balanced between the player who's ahead and the player who's behind, then at least the player who's behind can make an outplay and compensate for the item advantage, because at least their rune will do a little bit more. Um, and the other person's rune won't do a lot more. So if you can actually like proc your rune a couple of times and your opponent isn't as good at it, maybe it offers a little bit more opportunity for comebacks.
That
That's my
is
guess.
that is like the absolute
It's
like
generous, I know, but
lazy
that would be.
laziest rationalization for a comeback mechanic is doing all this to the damage
You're
runes.
calling my analysis lazy?
I'm saying that as an attempt to mitigate snowballing is like ridiculous. It's a good theory, I guess. And the reason
Well, they did
grasp
it.
is not
They
on
did,
here
they
is
did
because
it in a
grasp doesn't scale with anything.
I mean, I'm looking at other combinations they made this patch as well, right? As evidence, right? So, like, we're gonna get to the turret plating offering less gold in a moment. I think that they try to do a few things together, right, to mitigate snowballing a little bit, because the game does snowball pretty hard right now. And yeah, I think just like reducing the amount of damage from AD and AP is not the best way to do it. It's not the worst either. I don't hate it. Some of these changes do really feel like they typed into like ChatGPT. Hey, ChatGPT. People are complaining about the power of runes. Suggest some changes that we can make to make the audience happy. And this is what it came up with.
I can't imagine a majority of players being satisfied with changes like this. I mean,
I
this,
mean, these are really just kind of feel bad changes, right? They're both boring and they're power negative.
yeah. I mean, I think any player, regardless of how they feel about like snowballing or the meta, I can't imagine a majority of players would be satisfied. We'll just nerf all the runes that I play on like a bunch of my champions. That'll make me feel
Yeah,
better.
I agree with you. I agree with you. This really feels a little bit thoughtless. I'm guessing the rationale, and again, it's like they're trying to do something that they think the game needs, which is mitigate snowballing, but they don't understand how to actually make a simple change that makes the game more fun to play, while also solving the problem. Instead, they put a little band-aid in the problem that maybe opens up other problems and is not fun and is not simple. I mean, try reading through all of this, right?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I feel like there's no point to take the damage runes, and you might as well stick to the utility runes that didn't get nerfed into the ground for the most part. You know.
Yeah, I guess to like rapid fire through this, Arcane Comet, 10 to 15% less damage. Conqueror,
We don't
10%
need to
less
talk about
damage.
it.
Dark Harvest, 15% less damage. Electrocute, 15 to 20% less damage, depending on how much AD and AP you're using. First Strike, 10% less damage. Fleet Footwork, 10% less heal. Lethal Tempo, 10% less attack speed. Press the Attack. This one's a little weird because it only bothers you late game.
So
But it
33% less.
Well, 33% less amplifier on all of your skills. So yeah, I guess so at the higher levels. Um so let's call it 20% overall.
I,
Summon Airy.
I know this one's gonna
Um
hurt.
yeah, Summon Airy is a little weird because if you're actually playing like a 0 AP almost 0 AP support where you just build your mythic and nothing else AP, this actually is power neutral. But if you're building any AP, it's a good 15% less damage, 25% less shielding.
I can't believe this went from 22 AP to 5.
Exactly. Like at that point, just make it 30 to 120. Take off the AP and AD ratios and call it a day, so people at least understand how much they're getting out of it. Taste of Blood, about 5% less healing. And water walking. This one is an interesting one because they actually gave it more damage while you're in the river. And then they said, "Oh, what's the one thing you actually use water walking for? Movement speed to move between lanes quicker. Oh, let's take away 60% of that."
That's a classic move right there, man.
That is like the kind of like shit I've seen from them more and more in the last 2 or 3 years. This is a balance team that used to know what it was doing.
I feel like you're starting to put the tinfoil hat on. You just need you need a few more patches to push you there.
What's tinfoil about this? It's just like there's nothing tinfoil.
Yes,
They are
there.
putting it on a silver platter. Look,
No.
you know this reason that you use the rune? We're getting rid of it, and we're replacing it with 7 to 18 bonus attack damage while you're in the river.
No, man, this is perfect tinfoil stuff. Because what are they going to do over the next 2 months? They're going to slowly buff these keystones that 80 carries or whatever the hell, assassins for electrocute. They're going to slowly start buffing all these keystones again. Because there's going to be certain champions whose win rates are going to drop by 2% or something, or not going to be as laning phase dominant or something like that.
Well, that's the tinfoil territory that I'll let you wander. But no, this is just idiotic. Like water walking. The whole point was you're sacrificing the damage that would normally come from the other runes in that tree. I think that's Gathering Storm and Scorch. The whole point is you're sacrificing a little bit of damage for more movement and mobility and wandering. And they're like, no, let's just turn it into a worse version of damage that's only while you're in the river. I don't get it, man. Like, when they made the rune system, I mean, I know that we disagree about this, but I think that the rune system that they developed in Season 8...
These are not ruins. These are not ruins. These are reconfigured masteries. These are not ruins. These are reconfigured masteries.
Right.
The new ruins are dead.
The rune system is reconfigured masteries, but better. And I think that it was actually a brilliant change to combine the old runes and the old masteries into an interesting pick-your-own set of paths without having to go down a stupid branch system that, that offered interesting choices, such as, do I want more AP, more direct damage on my attacks, or more mobility in slot 3 of the sorcery tree. That was a great example of a good choice that they were offering to mages and even like assassins that wanted to go down this tree. Great, good job, guys. Here we are 5 years later, and they're like, oh, you know that mobility one? Why don't we just make it into a worse version of more damage? It just doesn't make sense.
It makes perfect sense.
It really looks like something they plugged into ChatGPT.
It makes perfect sense.
GPT gave them what?
It makes perfect sense. You're just not looking at it from the right angle. See,
Or it makes perfect sense if you're-
water walking is a very niche keystone. I'm gonna talk about just water walking because that's the one you're fixating on.
Yeah.
Water walking is a very niche, like jungling, essentially, maybe top lane kind of rune that you take explicitly for the mobility. Like 25 movement speed is nothing to sneeze at. Now,
Yeah.
they nerfed into the ground the one reason people took this, so now people will take it even less, and it'll go from being niche to non-existent, like Treasure Hunter, and then it'll give them an excuse to get rid of water walking and add a new keystone or a new rune to that row. That's what the purpose of this is.
Chrissy, my counter argument is they're not that smart.
Yes, dude, they nerfed Ravenous Hunter like 8 times, and then eventually they replaced it. They're gonna keep nerfing this, and I'm surprised they haven't done the same thing with Celerity.
They had something that worked, okay? You want to get rid of it, get rid of it. You want to add another, rune, you can do that. You've had 4 runes in a certain slot before.
You're too smart to not realize how they operate by now. They can't just get rid of it. They'll nerf it until its usage rates drip to like 1 in 1,000 games, and then they'll come out in a statement and say, well, it just wasn't getting the playtime that we envisioned for this rune and such.
Oh my god, this is what people said about Diet Coke. This is not how
that's what's going to happen with it, man.
We're gonna Diet Coke, I meant New Coke, but yeah. Like, that's what people said about New Coke. Like, some people were like, oh, those people at Coke sure were idiots. Some people were like, no. What they were trying to do was they were trying to, take real Coke away so that, everybody would appreciate real Coke when it came back. And what the people at Coke said years later, when they had nothing left to defend or to, try and, fool people, was, well, we're not that dumb and we're not that smart.
That would be a good example if they kept making the formula and the recipe worse, like every year until they eventually got rid of it. That's what they're doing with this. They'll make it worse until it's so unpalatable that no one wants to take it, which will energize another more interesting pick, and they'll replace it with water walking. Then 5 years from now, they'll bring back water walking, and it'll be stronger than it is now, and then the cycle perpetuates itself.
I just want to see if I can find any type of rationale for this now.
Like look at Force of Nature. That's back in the game now.
I have some good news for you. Water walking is not even listed in their rune adjustments in the official patch notes because they just don't care.
All right,
I don't even know what to say. Yeah. It's embarrassing.
Nothing that I haven't already went crazy about. Alright, next up, turret. Gold plates drop 50 gold. This is probably a pretty big change, I guess.
This is huge. Every turret plate is worth 50 less gold. So this is a snowballing thing, but also this is going to make it pretty much impractical to ever worry about turret plates.
Alright, let's see that happening.
125 gold is not, as Jeff Probst would say, worth playing for. You can be even more toxic to your laner as their laner roams and completely, ruins your lane, and your guy is just mindlessly pushing and gets 1 turret plate out of it.
I don't think they should even have turret plates in the game. I think the entire gold value should be tied to just the turret being destroyed.
No, I totally disagree with that. I think turret plating was one of the best things that they ever did, and here they are again ruining it.
I think you should be rewarded for taking the turret and not get gold that could be used for snowballing as you work on the turret.
Well, the whole point was they added turret plating in order to allow the turrets to stand for a much longer time.
Well, they could still give them more resistances. That doesn't change the gold.
Yeah, but then it just never. Then you just really can't get any advantage from pushing an opponent out of lane.
Well, you'd still do damage to the turret. You just wouldn't get gold.
Very little bit. Getting the resistances, which then drop at 14. Generally the turrets don't fall before 14. You're not going to be able to get that 5th plate. But at least you can get some gold off of it in the meantime. Meanwhile, a few minutes later, after 14, particularly once you get to 19, 20 minutes, and you have groups of 3 or 4 roaming around the map, 1 kill is basically you take the turret away. So I think it's perfectly good to to both allow the turret to stand up to 1 or 2 kills or ganks in lane early on, and offer a sizable reward to to the people that are able to deal a lot of damage to the turret early on. You do have to reward those early game lane bullies, even the ones that can't directly kill the opponent. I love turret plating. I think it's one of the best mechanics in the game, and here they are ruining it.
I'm all for turrets being more tanky. I don't have an overly strong position on the plating.
Yeah.
I don't think that it has to be tied to the durability of the turret, this money thing. I like the game to be slowed down.
Yeah, and this is also a big nerf to Rift Gerald. Like this is like 150 gold less that Gerald is giving you. And in addition to that, I think we have a change farther on later on where the local gold has been reduced by 100 on Gerald as well.
Okay.
So like, basically, if you're a jungler, just don't bother going after Rift anymore. Just like counter jungle if you see the opponent at Dragon. Try to take Dragon if you see your opponent anywhere else. Just gank a lane. Like I don't see the point of going for that objective anymore with gold being this low, and with the local gold being reduced.
No,
I
people are
understand they want
definitely
to.
going to do it still.
Oh yeah. Like like the worst junglers will always go after Rift when there's lots of other things that they can do. So yeah, I mean we're in a state now where I appreciate that they wanted to mitigate snowballing, but now there's basically no point in going after turret plates. Basically, if there's any chance that you'll be killed by overstaying, it's not even worth like a low chance that will happen in order to get 125 gold from a turret. Just take a better back. Either roam to another lane or take a better back, and then make it back to lane quicker, and push again and see if you can deny your opponent some minions, because the turret plates are just worth jack shit.
I don't really think it's going to change anything, to be honest. I think the gold is just gravy, and that it's such a pressure meta that people are just going to go for the turret damage no matter what. I don't think it's going to matter that the plates
Unless
give
you're a
less
Caitlyn
gold.
or something, it's really hard to pressure before 14.
I think
The
it
game
works. Yeah, I think bot lane is a little different because I think so much chaos is injected into bot lane.
Yeah.
But I think for the other two lanes, that I don't think the money you get from the plates is going to matter as much as the turret damage, which is always kind of the most
Like
important
just
thing.
even in mid lane, and that first mid turret is a very important turret to have standing or to knock down, because it gives you a lot more paths to wander the map with, to roam, to get to team fights and flank enemies. But again, it's so rare that one actually falls before 14 because of A, turret plating and the extra resistances that you get as you lose more plates, and then B, the short walk from fountain to mid lane. That it's like I don't even think the pressure game matters that much either. Obviously, you want to pressure the lane and get control over it so you can roam to an objective or gank another lane. But as far as actually putting pressure on the turret itself, I think that's pretty meaningless without the gold.
All right.
We just see the game in different ways.
I think you value the gold more than me, whereas I think the gold is just icing on the cake, and people that want to push are just going to push regardless. I don't think they're going to stop pushing less because the plates are worth less.
Yeah, but I think it really does change the calculus with like, I'm going to spend a lot less time pushing and taking plates, and instead I'm going to take the time pushing and then backing for, like to refill my mana or roaming to another lane, because I can get a lot more gold or just team advantage doing that than I can from 125 stinking gold from a play. That's how I feel.
To each
Yeah.
his own. Alright, next up, not going to go through all of these, just is all of the stacks are individually weaker and all of the ultimate soul
dragons.
effects are ultimately stronger.
Uh-huh.
Unless you have one that really sticks out as being overtuned, too weak, too strong. That's pretty much the gist of all of these changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the slow on Hextech Dragon Soul, which was already just so disruptive in fights, I think that's pretty big. I would say the biggest loss in terms of individual stacks is probably Mountain Drake, where you're getting 5% instead of 8% bonus resistances. And I would just say overall on the dragons, like I'm glad to see I'm glad to see the souls becoming a little bit stronger. Often I've like tried to get my team to not take the soul when we're way ahead because it opens up the Elder Drake, which can be like a game flipping objective if you just lose it once. And the soul really was not that powerful. Some people consider it to be a win condition, but they're wrong.
Good luck explaining that nuance to randoms. Like
Yeah,
I totally get why you would say that, but good luck explaining that to random people.
Oh, I've tried. It never works in random.
That's so smart, but you'll never convey that.
I can get my pre-made teams to do that sometimes, though.
Oh man.
Yeah. The individual drakes becoming like considerably less effective here. I think look, they're still better than Rift Gerald, with all these gold nerfs. But I really think that this not only lessens the impact of jungle a little, which is what I'm guessing maybe they were trying to do in a stupid roundabout way. But this really kind of reduces the incentive to spend a lot of time or risk going for it early. Like, unless you can get the dragon automatically, there are probably better things you can do with your time right now. Because is 5%, bonus resistances really going to be worth, a minute and a half of time? Taking the Drake and then resetting for all the, abilities that you had to spend on it? Maybe. Probably not. 2% of your missing health every, 5 seconds or whatever. By the time you're 10, 12 minutes into the game, that's not going to mean that much. Yeah, I just think that objectives are worth a lot less now than they were one patch ago. I'm glad to see that the souls are a little more powerful. But overall, think twice before you go for Drake. Those things take a long time to take down now.
I feel like these numbers have been screwed with so many times, I'm not sure I really have a take on it. I think I would have preferred the version before, because I'm way more interested in the stack bonuses than the soul bonus that you don't really see that often.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the stack bonuses were and should be nice, and they came out in a very underpowered state, and that very underpowered state looked a lot like it does right now, with the exception of the Air Drake, which was even worse. But I think it was 3% out of combat move. Maybe it was actually 5, 10, 15. I'm not sure. But anyway, most of the Drakes looked exactly like they do now after this patch in terms of the stacks. And they had to buff it several times over the last few years. And for some reason, 1320, Riot is just inting. They decided to throw all those buffs away. I'm disgusted.
Nothing suspicious about that.
Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, there's a few more things with the monsters.
Yep. Definitely not going to go over all of the monsters. The only big one I really noticed is the Baron Nashor has 20,000 more health, which is interesting.
2,000 more health. 20,000.
2,000, whatever. I'd be fine if it had 30,000 more health, to be honest.
Oh my god, the only thing that would ever be able to take that down is Yi, Nocturne, and
it's not so much that it would, I think it. I like that it's more of a commitment to kill it, and it takes longer to kill it because I feel like that opens up more players to kind of screw with the attempt to take it. And I like the counterplay of it taking, that it's a huge commitment to take it. I feel like it just dies too fast right now.
I would like them to make it less soloable, personally. So this obviously, yeah. So like this doesn't help with that, right? You can either solo Baron or you can't. I think that the corrupting, what is it called? The stacks when he spits on you.
I don't know what it's called, but yeah, those should probably reduce your
Yeah,
damage by more,
the
right?
corruption or whatever should not only reduce your damage, which I think it does, but also should also reduce your healing, your self healing, so that you can't just lifesteal from it forever as one person.
Well, lifesteal is based on physical damage dealt, and if you're doing half damage, your lifesteal is not going to be good.
That is true, but it's still not enough to stop a lot of the heavy lifesteal attack speed gems from soloing him. So I think they should also do that. But I do like that they increased Baron Nashor's health. I think that they should increase Elder Drake's. Like, that should be a huge commitment. And instead, it's pretty easy to take down.
I think Baron Nashor just needs a rework. I think he looks really cool. I think his look should not change. I think he needs a whole new set of abilities to make him more disruptive and dangerous. Things that are telegraphed, sure, but things that are also very damning to be forced to ignore or to be like stunned when they happen to go
Oh,
off.
so if you get hit while you're in the pit, or if you have to worry about the opponents, then he attacks you and it does something big. That's
Yes,
interesting. I kind
I
of like
think he
that.
needs. I think he needs a more interesting set of abilities. And right now he has like 3 skills, and they're all like
Uh,
pretty much ignorable. I just think he should be. I think it should be more of a risk to commit to it, and I think
do
it
you
should
want to
take.
make him into like more of like a super powered Rift Gerald or something?
No, I just want him. He looks perfectly fine. I like the way he looks. I just want him to
Okay.
have like another. Get rid of all of his abilities now, and give
Uh-huh.
him like 3 or 4 new abilities that he does periodically, and make them just more disruptive. Like it pushes people out of the kit, or there's some big like damaging ability that's telegraphed that you have to move out of. No one gives a shit if they get hit by the little knock-up thing he does now. People just
Uh-huh.
stand there and get hit by it. No one cares. Make it more damning to hit him from behind when he shoots the spikes out or something. Make him do like a special attack if someone hits him over the back wall, because that's kind of not in good taste. Something like that. I don't know. There's so many places they could take him, and I feel the same way about the Elder Drake. I feel like he should be for
Elder
how,
Drake needs to be a lot more
for
interesting and a
how
lot more
yeah,
dangerous.
for how absolutely damning the effect of Elder Drake is if you
Yeah.
secure it. I do feel like it should be as equal a commitment to Baron Nashor.
I think it should be a higher commitment than Baron Nashor. I mean, Baron is really nice to have. Elder Drake, you cannot fight a team with Elder Drake. Unless you're like 12,000 gold ahead and you have all the dragon stacks.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen a team actually lose against Elder Dragon or win.
You've never seen a team, what?
I don't think I've ever seen a team that had the Elder Dragon buff on everybody actually like lose the game or lose the next fight or something.
Well, I've
It's
certainly
not very common.
I've been on teams where one team was like 10,000 plus gold ahead and had the soul, and the other team got Elder Drake, even with everybody alive. And at that level, it was like with reasonably coordinated play, the team that was ahead was still winning the fights. But like that's what it takes. It takes like a 10 plus thousand gold lead and Dragon Soul. And that was with the stacks before this patch.
Alright, I'm definitely not interested in going over all these monsters, but if they each just follow a theme of getting
They
more
do.
MR, getting more armor, more health,
So yeah,
something like
they
that.
take longer to take down. They deal a little bit less damage to you, and I assume the point is to make the junglers get experience a little bit slower.
Well, alright. Let's go to
Yep.
the Rift Scuttler as our final change, because that one does operate a little better. What do we got here?
I honestly hadn't looked at that one specifically, but it looks like he has considerably more health at high levels. More gold at high levels, and more experience at high levels. So they're just making the Rift Scuttler continue to be important throughout the game instead of just early on, which I thought it was already pretty important for the vision. And the speed boost, obviously.
I honestly be happy if... I like the Rift Scuttler idea, but I almost hate that it's in the game because it just encourages so many frustrating encounters between the junglers, and especially when you're in mid lane, I feel like jungle shenanigans or river shenanigans. I forgot what I used to
Uh-huh.
tell Matt. I think it was river shenanigans is like the
Yeah.
most annoying thing when you're mid lane because you're like always getting pulled off to deal with the inevitable goofy forced 1v1 of the Rift
Hmm.
Scuttler. It's like I can't stand it. It's so annoying.
I agree with that completely. And in the same thought, I also, from a game design standpoint, do like the idea of encouraging skirmishes, like creating places that people want to fight around. Because in general, fighting is fun. But yeah, as a mid laner, it does feel incredibly annoying when your opponent like finishes a wave and you're about to take the wave, and then your jungler is like pinging you 16 times because he wants to fight for like a little rift scuttler.
I know, and you're like, oh
He's
yay,
gonna get
coin
80
flip
gold.
time, let's go.
And then you both get killed, or you go over to help him, and then the two people turn on you, and he's like, "Ah, all right, peace out."
I know, it's just a
Yeah,
stupid coin flip
it
interaction that
is
you.
incredibly annoying as a mid laner, but I am of two minds because it is a cool game design element. I don't know if there would be a way to do it better. Maybe just have the Rift Scuttlers start spawning a little bit later into the game.
Yeah,
Maybe once like both junglers are at 6 or something like that.
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or you know what it could do?
What could you do?
You like those turret plates so much. What if for like the first several minutes of the game, the Rift Scuttler had this outer shell that just reflected damage, so you couldn't really afford to damage it early on because you hadn't scaled past the point where you could kind of shake off the damage. So going for it would be like way too risky early on, because until like 10 minutes into the game, it won't drop its outer shell that like reflects damage or something.
All right.
I think that would work too. Because then everyone would be like, well, we can't attack that thing. We'll just fuck ourselves up, and then we can't go back to clear because we'll have to recall. Okay, now we've
Okay,
got.
now let's talk about every ARAM change.
No, there's a small hot fix here where I guess it's a bug fix that the cooldown was increased for Jax here at the bottom. This cool hot fix.
Yeah, that is weird. They're calling that a bug fix. I'm not exactly sure, but looks like they increased the cooldown on Counter Strike, which is significant. Like that's an important part of his ability to engage and to survive fights. And then we've
Yep.
got Grandmaster at his ultimate mana cost increased to 100. Wasn't that supposed to be done a couple patches ago?
So did somebody inadvertently buff him, and then the hot fix was to unbuff the unneeded buff? Is that?
Yeah, my guess is they probably reverted changes that were made a few patches ago, if I had to guess. Because, again, just laziness and spaghetti code and not having the proper tests in place to to have like a little debug tool print out every single damage and movement speed and mana cost that's done in terms of like a debug log, and to have like the hitboxes shown visually on screen in a debug mode. They don't have any of that, and so they keep making these stupid spaghetti code errors. And then they fixed Ilaoi and Tryndamere bugs, it looked like. And I know they were trying to fix the jungling experience problem, where you have to be like right next to the monster to get the experience. Looks like that is not fixed yet.
Cool.
Good job, Riot.
Alright, that does it for 13.20. Someone still hasn't made up their mind yet of our next champion judgment we're going to do, but that'll be probably. Well, no, there'll be another patch before then, probably. But,
Yep, we're gonna be hitting that as usual, right around the first of the month. And yeah, I'll give you the champion in a few days.
okay. Check out that Cogma video, it was fun.
That was a good one.
It was a very long one, too.
Don't tell them that.
Okay, that'll do it. See you guys later. Alright, welcome to part 3. Have some internet problems or Discord's freaking out. It's probably my fault since my internet's been really ghetto the last few months. Next up, we got Silas, who's getting more mana. I actually do think he's pretty mana hungry early on. I don't think it's his problem in the late game, though.
Yeah, agreed. He actually does run out of mana in a lot of the early trades early on. It's the only way that he can really fight, and this will let him basically use one more skill every time he comes back from Biss.
Yep.
Of one more skill before he runs Zoom. It's a small buff, but it's a nice buff for him.
Yeah, not a lot to say about that. Next up, we got some stat buffs to Tristana. Let's see, we got less health, more armor per level, and
less magic
less
resist.
MR. Yeah, I don't really know what to think about that.
Basically, they went nowhere with this. This is like some corporate executive basically hiring a bunch of accountants to make it look like the money went to one division instead of another, so that they were like profitable. But really, it didn't do anything to the business.
I'd say 3 of these changes are pretty meaningless. I think the only one of consequence is her gaining base armor, because for an AD carry, any bit of armor to mitigate the flat shred of lethality, I think, is impactful. So I think that's the only one of consequence.
Yeah, but that's 4 base armor. At the beginning of the game, you're probably taking more damage from the support than you are from the ADC.
But Serrated Dirk is like 10 armor spend, basically.
Yeah, later on. But even that, means she's taking maybe like 3% less damage, but she also has 3% less health. This really feels like a nothing burger to me. The one thing I might guess, and I haven't seen it much lately, but have you seen Tristana mid, maybe? I'm thinking maybe they're trying to make her worse against mages?
That was actually a thing like 2 years ago. People were busting out like Tristana and Lucian. Just because they both are so fucking aggro and have such an all-in against the mages.
I haven't seen it recently. But I'm wondering if that could possibly be the case, because as far as ADC Tristana, in the laning phase and really through the entire game, this is nothing. This is like a zero-sum change.
It's not a buff.
Yeah, I really think this is a zero-sum change. The only thing I can guess is they're trying to make her worse against mages mid, and even then, I haven't seen her mid more than once or twice in the last year.
Alright.
That's a weird one.
I would say it's a net nerf instead of power neutral, as you like to say.
Okay. I would say it's completely power neutral myself.
Well, I think the base armor is more impactful in the laning phase, even if the armor growth eventually compensates for that. So that's the part of the game.
They're giving her more armor and more armor growth.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's more impactful.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's no like compensation. The compensation is they're getting rid of the MR and they're getting rid of health.
I hear you.
Okay. So you think it's a buff? I think it's a nothing burger.
Okie dokie. Next up, we got Wukong, and they decided to make his Q cost no mana. That's okay, because it's always up anyway. And then there's like a bug on my screen. I assume this is a change to his W clone thing. The text on my screen is kind of messed up with this ability for some reason.
Warrior Trister?
Yeah.
It says mana cost is reduced to 60 to 40 from 80 to 40. So at the earlier ranks, it costs less mana. So this is just basically more mana for Weaselwoo all around.
Yeah, nobody really plays him top anymore. He's basically just a cheese lord full AD jungler now.
Yeah, it's mostly in the jungler, and more often than not, I actually see him succeed there.
There was a time where this champion was kind of like an off-tank or a bruiser in the old days. Those times. He's moved on to Talon levels of play, though.
Actually, in Arena, I've seen him kind of go bruiser, with some success as well. But yeah, as far as the Rift, he's more of a burst assassin type.
Okie dokie. That'll do it for the champion changes. Next up, some very inconsequential item changes. Ace, first up, we've got Axiom Arc,
Uh-huh.
which got a big nerf in the other patch that really limited its user base, but now they're giving the baseline effect a big, or I guess a bit of a buff.
Didn't
Now
we
that it,
decide that? Sorry, go on.
well, the rest of the portion of the ability now scales only with lethality now, where it was strong enough to be picked up as a one-off item on just about any AD champion that
Uh-huh.
wanted to abuse it. Uh, it's probably still the case that this is still kind of not worth getting on anyone that doesn't build like full lethality, though, even with this buff.
Well, I think when we looked at this change, we actually worked out the numbers, and because it gives you 18 lethality in itself, it was like you get one more lethality item, and you're breaking even, and then beyond that, you actually do better, than when it used to refund. Was it 25% of your total cooldown? Was it 30?
I don't remember, but it was good enough to be a one-off item on someone who would not build any other lethality items.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely worse as a one-off now. But what we're going to see with all of these item changes is that everything except Duskblade of Drakthar for assassins basically picked up a small buff, and then Duskblade got a nerf. So just for that, I think there's going to be a lot of assassins shifting from Duskblade, which was just so good, to Axiom Arc. And yeah, now that it's giving you a 10% cooldown plus 0.4% per lethality, which just from this one item is another 7%. This really isn't bad.
Well, I'd like to say one thing. You said switch, where Axiom Arc is not a mythic like Duskblade is. So there's no like this or
Now,
that
speaking of
decision.
Duskblade,
Well, you made it sound like both of them are mythics and you have to choose one or the other. One's a legendary and one's a mythic, so. Know what I mean? Oh, for God's sakes. Alright, here we are with part 4 of 16 or 13.16. And last thing I said is you were saying how they would have to switch from Dustblade to Axiom Arc, and before it cut out, I explained that only Dustblade is a mythic and Axiom Arc is a legendary, so you don't have to switch. You can still get them
that's
both.
right. That's right. Axiom Arc's not not a mythic. I keep thinking it is. Um,
It was Prowler's Claw that got downgraded.
yes, yes. I don't know why I was thinking that. Sorry, but yeah. So I think Axiom Arc is still looking pretty good in a lot of builds now, especially now that it's 10% lethality plus 7% just for its baseline value with the lethality it gives you. And I said 10% lethality, I meant the cooldown reduction. Plus bonus for all the other lethality that you stack up. Like, if your champ likes being able to ultimate twice during a fight, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a cool item. I just feel like it's a little too niche. I wish there was like a version other types of champions could take.
And by the way, for everybody listening to us continually cut out and having to do this video in 4 parts, you should have listened to me at the beginning. I told you to skip this one. But thank you for listening all the way through anyway.
Alright, next up we'll talk about Dustblade now, where the like fade and targetability thing now has a 30-second cooldown instead of 10.
Yeah.
That's probably a good thing, but then the bonus damage went down a tiny bit. At one point it was like 25%, then got nerfed to 20, now it's getting hit again. Overall though, for like the jump in there and kill someone people, the fact that it just triggers at least once is the important thing.
Yeah, I think this is actually a fairly big nerf to the Duskblade, and I'll tell you why. While generally in a like a really intense bursty team fight, you're only going to be able to proc this once anyway, whether it's 30 seconds or 10 seconds. What a lot of the really good assassins do is they can proc it once in a team fight, get out of that team fight, and then as it breaks up and people are trying to back and buy their items, or as they're trying to move on to an objective, they find another target, they pick them off there, and then any of their teammates that were near them If you've got the Duskblade proccing a second time, you can get away from them. And that was actually a nice thing that a lot of the really good assassins did. And I found them doing that in a lot of my games, and honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. Like, I totally agree that Duskblade was an overpowered item and it needed a nerf of some sort, but they nerfed the coolest part of the item. I would have really liked them to just take away some of the, just a little bit of the stats instead, and let the really good assassins do their cool assassin things.
I think it was just fine. I only thought it was broken prior to like the AD item giant overhaul when it would constantly reset. That's when I thought it was too strong.
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, that's basically as strong as Kha'Zix's ultimate.
Almost every assassin is going this as their mythic, and even a lot of people who are supposed to be fighters, people like Wukong, are taking things like this. It really was just it was crowding out a lot of the other assassin items and even some of the other AD mythics that were not designed for ADCs, obviously. So I'm glad it got nerfed, but I really wish they would have nerfed the stats rather than the coolest part of Duskblade. That's all.
Okie dokie. Next up, we got Prowler's Claw, and I actually like this change. It's such kind of a not a super impactful effect like it used to have, that crazy dash where you would dash through people. Those days are gone. Now this is basically just a I kind of think of it as like just an extra keystone almost, what this item does. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's
You just get bonus damage for dashing. Yeah, I feel like that's what, sudden impact, kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean it's resetting every few seconds and has obviously a very easy condition for a lot of champions to proc. Yeah, they're just improving it a little bit, and which is kind of what they did with all these other assassin items that are not called Duskblade.
Yep.
That's all I gotta say.
And then lastly, we've got Serpent's Fang and Umbral Glaive, both gained some lethality. These are kind of the Joker utility lethality items that nobody buys anyway. The ones that you find on like Senna and Pike because they're just so poverty stricken. So now they get a little more bang for their buck, but none of the mainstream mid laners ever take these basically.
Yeah, I agree with you in general. Serpent's Fang definitely has some niche uses in certain games. For if you're going against a set that's getting like 400% of his HP as a shield, if you're going against even like a Vex or something like that, can get a pretty big shield. If you can use the Serpent's Fang against a couple champions that are putting really big shields on themselves, it pays off for itself. But I agree.
I don't really think it's good enough at what it does.
They've buffed it a few times over the years, and I think if you find the right team to use it against, it's actually a quite good item as a fifth item or so.
Yeah.
Umbral Glaive, yeah, I don't see that very often. The Blackout assassin item used to be very popular, but once it was moved to Umbral Glaive, hasn't really been seen much. But, worth pointing out, this is more lethality, and if you're using that in combination with Axiom Arc, hey, pretty good.
Yep. Well, that does it for 13.16 finally, and we better get the hell out of here.
Before we have to do a part 5. Yeah, we're out. See ya.
Alright. See you guys next time.